Hello everyone, today's poem is Xiaoya, 节南山 PART2. This is a very typical blaming poem written at the very end of the West Zhou dynasty when there is many disasters by the nature. At the same time, there's a lot of disasters by the political affairs. Thus, this high-ranking officer, the poet, wrote this poem to blame the political status, to blame some of the very bad political figures of the time being. In the first part, we basically point out very clearly the two type of people or two delicate person. One is refers to the military officers, the most high-ranking military officers. One refers to the most high-ranking civil servant officers. Both of them, they don't do any good to the country, and at the same time there are famines, there are pandemics, and a lot of people lost their lives, and everybody experienced a huge disasters, and the poet, as a high-ranking officers, he point out that though the most worst thing is those high-ranking officers, they don't do any good to this country. Let's continue in our part 2 for the rest of the poems. The fifth paragraph, 昊天不庸，降此居凶. The vast heaven don't do anything good, and it put this huge disaster upon us. 不庸 means don't do anything. Yung is doing something, because in the believing of the Zhou people, the normal society or the normal life was ensured by the heaven. The heaven should do his duty to ensure a normal life. If it don't do anything, the heaven don't do anything, of course we don't have a normal life. The nature will be in a disordered, in a chaos situation. So here is something a little bit blaming to the heaven, and in the fact it's a blaming to the king, because the king is the representative of the heaven, who was execute the power of heaven in the country, but for the politeness, for the normal code of conduct of the Zhou dynasty, he cannot blame or name calling the king of Zhou directly. So, but he can comply to the heavens. The heaven, you don't do anything good, and you put those huge disasters upon us. Okay, let's continue. Same thing. The following sentence, same thing. 昊天不惠，降此大利. 惠 means do some good things too. So this means the vast heaven, you don't do anything good to us, and you put this huge disaster upon us. 大利, li is the disaster. So these two pair of sentences actually mean same thing, and in the surface it's name calling to the heaven, but actually he's blaming the king of Zhou. And then you can see the rest of the sentence, he get to the name of the Lord. 君子如芥，辟民心缺. The Lord was at the edge, and he let the people's heart just ended or gone away. So this is the Chinese way of saying. So if we put it in normal words, the Lord, the king of Zhou, he don't do things fairly, and he lost the believings or trust of his people. So that's why the people's heart ended or gone away. 缺 means vanished, gone away. The character 界 means the edge. So why do they describe the Lord, the king of Zhou, was at the edge? Because in the philosophy of Zhou people, the king, the Lord, is the final judge of everything, of everybody. So he should do things very fairly. So if two parties, they have some of the arguments, then they come to the kings for a final judgment. The king should be sitting in the center of these two group of people, and he should judge the things, the benefits, the whatsoever fairly in the center. And then each of the parties, they just take their fair portions back. So that was the most critical or essential philosophy for the Chinese till today. So there's a very, very old words, 允直觉中. So that's something words before the Zhou dynasty, and that's the philosophy a king told to his descendants. You should take everything carefully and at the center to make everything fairly. So that's 君子如戒，屁民心缺. The Lord, the king of Zhou, he was standing at the edge. He's not doing something. He's not doing his job fairly. Okay, let's continue. 君子如夷，恶怒视为. Though there could be many explanations, but my explanation for this sentence is the king of Zhou is just like the foreign states. Yi has two meanings normally. It's a foreign states and or the flat. But here I would prefer to translate as the foreign states because why they are foreign? Because they don't follow the code of conduct. So 君子如夷 means the king of Zhou, he didn't follow the code of conduct. He violated the very basic regulations, the laws, the morals of Zhou dynasty. And he violated a lot of things and made so many bad things and aroused a lot of the fury from the people. Next paragraph. 不调昊天，乱民有定. I do think it's still about the king of Zhou, the blame to king of Zhou. You don't pay your condolence to the vast heaven. Thus, the turmoil, the disturbance never stopped, had never been settled down. 有定 settled down. 世月思生，辟民不宁. The moon comes up as still. The moon shows up, became a full moon, and it vanished as still. 1 month passed like this, but still it let the people not settled down. The people are not in peace. 世月思生, it should be the sequence as 月世思生. The moon follows its natures, follows its own rules to show up and vanish. Thus, months passed. 私生 the moon became a new moon, so that means the moon was born. Okay, let's continue. 忧心如城，谁秉国城? So here it comes to the poet himself. I was so worried, like drunk. Who could take the strong and build this country? 城 means drunken. 秉 means take the strong or take the power to rule this country. 国城 should be 成国 to build this country, to make this country better. 不自为政，除劳百姓. You don't rule by yourself, and finally you make the people very, very hard, and even some of them even lost their lives. And here, be careful, 百姓 is not the meaning as today. Today, 百姓 means the people, all the people. But in the Book of Songs time, 百姓 means the noble person. Only the noble person has family name, and so roughly there are 100 names in the Book of Songs time, so that was so-called 百姓. And the lower level people, the slaveries, they don't have a family name, so whenever you saw the term 百姓 in the Book of Songs, it always means the noble person, because the king of Zhou, his duty was for these noble persons, never to those slaves or the normal peoples. Okay, the next paragraph. 驾比四母，四母相邻. A very familiar words, right? I drive these 4 horses, and these 4 horses has a very strong, powerful neck. So this is a quite routine writing, 驾比四母, but he has a little bit change, 四母相邻. He described the strong neck, to use the strong neck to express or to describe these powerful horses. So this is about the poet himself. 我瞻四方，处处弥所聘. I look to the 4 directions, and I tightened my eyebrows, and there's no way I can go. 瞻 look, 四方 the 4 directions, 处处 the tighten the eyebrow. So it's something when you're worried, it's quite easily you tighten your eyebrow. 聘 is running the horses, driving the horse, running quickly. And this is also could be a long word, or it's double referring, because with the same sound, the pin means to go to visit someone, to ask, to talk to someone. So that is a very, very important term in the Book of Songs time, because the people or between the country or between the noble persons, the meetings was so-called pin. So whenever you saw the term pin, it means the 2 noble persons or even 2 states, they are having some of the very political or important things to talk about. So they have a meeting, they have pay a visit to have a meeting. So these terms has double referring at the poet was so worried, so he drive his chariot out with 4 horses out, but there is no way he could go, which means nobody was thinking the same way as him. and nobody was worried about the country, about the king. So he has nobody could talk to. He cannot pay a visit to anyone. Just now, you feel so angry or you are so disgusting and you look to your weapons. You here very likely was referring to the high-ranking officers. So from this pair of sentences, we can imagine that the poet had a meeting with those high-ranking officers, even the kings together. They had a meeting and they have a big quarrel. Nobody agreed with the poet, and so the poet was in such a fury and angry. He drive his chariot to go run in the wild, to release his anger, to release his feelings. In the previous meeting, the other high-ranking officers, or maybe the king of Zhou, they are so dangerous and they are so mean. When they had a big quarrel, they don't agree with each other. They look to their weapons. Mao is a weapons, which means they even want to kill this poet. When they have a different opinion, they are against each other. So that's not the way people or the politicians deal with each other. They should discuss the things fairly, and then they should decide, make the final decision in the center to ensure everybody's rights and benefits. Not just use your weapon to kill the other party. So that's not the way. So they are the worst people if we if we consult the code of conduct. They should never do that things to kill their brotherhood, to kill their brothers. Okay, let's continue. 记忆如相朝矣. Still, it's a recall to the meeting with those high-ranking officers when the things was over. Yi means flattened, which means over. When something was settled down, when their quarrel was settled down or over, and then they feel okay, they feel happy after the quarrel. Those high-ranking officers, 如相朝矣, and they go with each other and they toast with each other. It looks like a good thing, but actually the poet wants to tell us those high-ranking officers, they don't behave with moral, with rules. One time they just want to kill you, and the other time they show up as your best friends. But actually, this poet has never changed his mind. He was as what he was. But those very ugly, high-ranking officers, they change all the time, and you never know what they thought about or what their moral or rules was. Now the last paragraph. In the previous paragraph we had today, the poet implicate his blaming to the kings, and then he recalled the very dangerous and ugly meeting with those high-ranking officers. They are really mean person. And at the very end of this poem, the last paragraph, let's see what the poet was writing about. 昊天不平，我王不宁. The vast heaven was not settled down. Still a lot of the turmoils. My king doesn't settle down. So here, 我王不宁 could have two meanings. One is referring to the king, and the other, the character Wang, could be a verb, which means to ruling. So both actually explained this poem very well. So our ruling, the Zhou dynasty ruling, is not settled down. Is still in a chaos. 不逞其心，复怨其政. Those guys, they don't correct their heart. They don't make their heart right. And on the other hand, they complain about those decent person who was sitting in the center, in the right way. So if you look to the character Chang and Zheng, they share some of the common components. Or Chang has the character Zheng in it. So Chang actually, by its very original meaning, is to put your heart in the center. And later on, it means to punish someone or to correct someone, to make his heart to be in the center. The center is the philosophy of the Zhou people. If there is a benefit to shared with two parties, you should cut the benefits in the middle so the two parties can take their fair shares equally. So that's the philosophy for Zhou people, to do something in the center, to cut the benefits in the center. And let's check this philosophy on the second half of the sentence. 复怨其政. So those bad high-ranking officers, they complained about those people who is sitting in the center, who is doing the things in the right way. Okay, let's continue. 家父作咏，以究王兄. I, myself, my name is Jia Fu. I made this poem, I made this song to explore this disaster of the king. Wang Xiong, the disaster of the king of the country. 视俄尔心，以恤万邦. And use this to rule your heart, to correct your heart, and finally to make the whole country, to let all the people could live a good life. So the last paragraph basically is a ramp up of the whole poem, a reconfirmation to the whole poem, and also he explained why he write this poem and who write this poem, and thus this poem we know the author's name is Jia Fu. So this is one of the very few poems in the Book of Songs that have the author's name, because the author attached his name in his poem. So that in the last paragraph, the first two pair of sentences is the ramp up of the whole country, of the whole poem. 昊天不平，我王不宁. We have disasters by the nature, by the heavens, and the ruling is not well. The ruling is so bad, and some of the high-ranking officers, they do things unfairly. They do things badly, and they complain to those decent person like me. And the last two pair of sentences actually is telling why and who is writing this poem. My name is Jiafu. I make this poem to explore the root cause of this disaster of the country, of the kings. And I try to use this poem to change the mindset of those high-ranking officers I was blaming in this poem. 是 to use the code of conduct to regulate those people, and is to change those people. 心 is heart, so it derived the meaning as mindset, emotion, feelings. So the last pair of sentence 是而心以虚万邦 means I use this poem to regulate, to change your mindset, to change your feelings. And finally, let's cater the whole country, the 10,000 states, fairly and well. The character 续 means catering, feed someone. So that's one of the fundamental philosophy of the Zhou people. So for today, if we want to express the goodwill, goodness to others, we say we love, or someone loves somebody. But in the Zhou dynasty, they are very practical. There is even not a similar words as love today. They use the word 续. So that's the most and that's the highest level of love for Zhou people, and that's the highest value for the Zhou people. So let me give you an example. The nature catering the human and all the creatures, and that's the most high level. That's the greatest love by the heaven to the nature, to the creatures and humans. And the parents catering the kids, and that's the greatest love a parent could have toward their kids. So you know how important this character 续 means, or this concept means to the Zhou people. And another concept, 万邦, 10,000 states. So it's hard for us to imagine there's so many states in the Zhou dynasty, in this piece of land of basically along the midstream and lower stream Yellow River. But actually it is. It may not reach to the level of 10,000, but at least more than 1,000 states in the Zhou dynasty. And the 10,000 states, 万邦, normally was used to refer to the whole universe, or all the land on the earth. So the Zhou dynasty, they have more than 1,000, and plus all the states around. 10,000 states is still a reasonable term to refer to the land on the earth. Okay, we have finished this long and very angry poem. And in the subchapter of 节南山2 there are several other poems basically with same style. I think I will introduce one more poems of this type, a blaming poem which was written at the very end of the West Zhou dynasty. So this poem basically is the very root of the later generations so-called patriotism, poems. The most outstanding poems was by Du Fu in the Tang Dynasty, and you can see that Du Fu has inherited a lot from these poems in the Book of Songs. From these blaming poems, we can feel that the Zhou people, they are quite straightforward. They talk directly, no matter to the higher-ranking officers or to the king of Zhou. They just say it straight and out loud. And we can also feel through hundreds of years of developing, the poems became more complicated. At least it's quite long, and it can reflect very complicated, sophisticated feelings and mindset. The country, the kingdom, was about to be destroyed, while the poetry of the time was booming with its sophistications. So what a time it was at the end of the West Zhou Dynasty. Okay, that's for today. Bye-bye.